dear mentors. In this video, we'll talk about communication in the teaching and learning of mathematics. And so first, let me say this is a very complicated and big and complex topic. So we're only gonna deal with very specific items. So one way to think about math, instead of an activity in which we just transfer knowledge, one student gets some knowledge, it's looking at it at a more social way. And so we have math in the center, and here we have communication, questioning, and dialogue. So you could call also this as the discourse. It's many social elements that actually help learn math. And the advantage of thinking math like that, it's actually very visible in the classroom because you actually get more tools that can make students learn. So it's a very different framework from what you may be familiar before as math, just as learning formulas or transferring some knowledge. We actually want to think of math as participating. So if you participate, you're learning, and the quality of the participation transfers to the quality of learning. So it's a big paradigm change. And so what we want to say is that learning and mathematics are social activities. We also want to say that mathematical thinking is closely related to communication, whether it's external or internal. And even some radical mathematics education researchers equate mathematical thinking with internal mathematical communication. But so for now, we'll just say that when you have a dialogue with other people, and when you are able to internalize that dialogue and just mimic or imitate what happened when you had these interactions, that is helping you think, or that maybe even they're just thinking. And lastly, we want to say that learning is both acquiring knowledge, because you acquire knowledge, and it's also participating in discourse. So we don't want to pick between one of them necessarily. I think it's good to have both ideas of what means or what constitutes thinking and learning in mathematics. Acquiring knowledge, but also participating. So we want to put both of them at the top. And in this video, we'll talk about the participating part more. How can we engage students in this dialogue, and which techniques can we use? So there's many things you can do in math for communicating. You can do debates. You can do demonstrations and routines. Think of them as rituals for those that are initiating in the math activity. So math is kind of like a cult, but it's like a good one. And it's good to think in that way. I mean, that happens. Mathematics is a human activity. Explanations, thinking out loud, that produces reflection. Conversations, just have natural conversations. And then a very important factor, questioning techniques. How are you going to assess the learning, and how are you going to make it deeper? So think of these as just general strategies or tools or aspects of communication. And so we'll deal in this video very shortly with three of them. So first, reflective talk, which is important because it helps me model mathematical attitudes. It helps build an identity of, if I'm doing math, what am I supposed to do? So that's what is important. Then we have questioning techniques, and what they do is, beyond many things, activate and deepen the thinking. So that they make the student think, and they make them think in a deeper way. It also helps us assess the learning much better than tests, like multiple choice tests, for example. Questioning techniques are just more effective, and they are more useful for that. And finally, some aspect that is a little technical, but is also very important, the prompts and the cues. So they just direct, focus, and regulate the communication. So you may think of this as oil somehow in a car or in a salad that just makes the thing flow, and it just connects things. It just makes it more rounded, more efficient, and there are specific tools for that. Let's start with reflective talk. So when I do thinking out loud activities, when I reflect about previous solutions, when I discuss the options that I have, and when I also compare methods or models, I'm doing reflective talk. And so I do it as a teacher. So here are some tips that as a mentor you can use in your math classroom. So one is use the word I. So refer in first person. Tell experiences from your point of view. This just turns out to be more effective for modeling. And it also, of course, creates some empathy because you're telling us a story from your point of view. And I guess we're used as teachers when we learn math and even when we teach it to use more with the words, to direct to students like you should do this, or maybe even we should do this. But it's actually more powerful for boosting reflection to use I do this. This is how I do it. Let me tell you how I do it. So I encourage you to use this. The second tip is use reasoning expressions. Use a lot of the words because or expressions because, for this reason, therefore, and that is why, etc., etc. Why do we want to do this? It activates reflection. It's also sending the message that in mathematics it's not just about getting the answers, but about justifying them. And finally, trigger reflection and intuition. So you want to activate those two things. So you want to use because, as in the previous tip, but you also want to use things like I wonder if, I still don't know, it's still not clear, this compares to this. So make it like a complicated issue. Don't be afraid that because you're doing math, you're not supposed to speculate or gain intuition. You have to talk like you would talk in complicated issues because math is complicated. And that will engage your student more. And that will make the mathematical quality better. So that's reflective talk. For questioning, the idea is that we promote and deepen thinking. So we want to make questions that make people think. That's the main golden rule. And so some tips are the following. Go beyond yes or no questions, or also numerical questions, or go beyond questions that you're anticipating just a few words for an answer. Try to ask more about the why and the how. Why is this convenience here? How were you able to solve this problem? Why did you do it this way and not this way? Why do you think I made this choice? Try to ask questions such that the answers are more complicated, more than a few words. Point to relations between the concepts and the representations. Make them focus on that. Also, the second tip, you want to avoid asking questions that already tell the answer. So these are kind of hidden answer questions. You instead want to ask questions that invite to focus on certain aspects, so to deepen observation. And this type of questions will not be in the sense of, just telling me the answer that I kind of gave it to you, but look at this aspect. What can you tell me about this aspect without revealing what I want you to tell me? You may want to tell me other things and I can redirect you, but I don't want to give you the answer right away. Then there would be no point in questioning because questioning is to make you think. I wouldn't be making you really think. And finally, the last tip is wait for students to answer. And this tip may seem simple or you may ignore it at first, but actually research shows that many teachers don't wait for an answer. So they're just waiting 1 or 2 seconds at the most. You want to wait a few seconds, maybe 5, sometimes 8. So you want to send the message that thinking is some activity that takes time. And finally, let's talk a little bit about prompts and cues. And the goal for them is to make communication effective. So I can prompt you, I can give some tips, or I can give some signals that let you know what is important, what is maybe not so important, and I can do this in very different ways. We'll explore prompts and cues in more detail in another video, but for now we can at least say some things. So here are some tips. Use them through the whole communication process. Don't use them just at the beginning or just when you're monitoring. try to use it actually transversally, so at any given moment, when they are convenient, of course. Know your students to maximize the impact. Some prompts may work better for some types of students, and same for some cues. So you want to gain some knowledge and adjust as the lesson goes, or as the lessons go, and then you'll be able to use them more efficiently. And finally, incorporate a variety of prompts and cues into your teaching. So what happens sometimes is that we as teachers like very much some type of techniques, and we stick to that, which is good, but then we are missing out maybe of some others. So I really encourage you to try new prompts or cues that you may not be familiar with, or that maybe you think you're not very comfortable at first, and it's okay. But I encourage you to try, and you may actually find that they're very useful. So don't be afraid of trying. And let's finish with some examples of prompts and cues. So remember, this is like oil that makes things flow better, more rounded, so it just makes things more effective. You want to guide students, you want autonomy, but you also want rules, and you also want to model a lot of things. And this is the tool. So here's an example of a prompt. I could be with a student working on some geometry problem, and he may be stuck, or he may maybe not be inspired. I could tell him, remember how the area of a triangle relates to the area of a square, or to the area of a rectangle, anything that works. How can you use this that you already know? So this prompt has the following purpose. Point to things that the student already knows, but has temporarily forgotten. So at the moment, he's just not aware of that. Or maybe he's not applying it right. So with a prompt, you can actually correct that. You don't want to tell the answer. You just want some small prompt. And then let's look at an example of a cue. So a cue would be change your tone, maybe change your speed, and change your volume, or some of them. And this cue that some teachers do, some others don't, but we really encourage you to use it, has the following purpose. You signal key ideas. So you pause, or maybe you raise your voice, and you're making your audience, which is your student, know, oh, this is important. Oh, maybe this is not so important, and maybe this is just a detail, etc., etc. Of course, this is just a type of cue. This is a verbal cue. There's more type of cues, like gestural, or environmental, or just visual cues. And as I said in a later video, we'll explore these things. So this is for now communication. We'll have more videos that go deeper into that. Let me finish by saying that in Math CEO, we take communication very seriously, and we see it as a very important tool to promote not just learning, but also caring for our students. Thank you.